Well, hello folks, welcome aboard this week. I'm coming to you live from a very different view from the cockpit of Charis, as we are in the middle of our biannual dry dock. Life on the hard, that's what this week's about. I'm not going to bore you with bottom paint rolling and all of the mundane things, though I will throw a little bit of a comment in there about what I'm using for bottom paint product. Talk a little bit about some of the unusual underwater features of Charis. Give you a glimpse of what she looks like below the waterline, which frankly is where most of a good seaboat's attributes are visible. I'm not a big fan of chains or equity buyouts, but I'm here at Safe Harbor's Seacocks River Yard. Been coming here since the early 90s, actually. Been through many changes of ownership and management, but always been a good yard. They've always treated me well. A little blip last time. I don't know what was going on there. Maybe one of the corporate buyouts, the manager got to be a little bit difficult to deal with toward the end, but I was hesitant, even doubting that they were going to want me to come back this year. Anyway, decided to call, give him a shot, and turns out the old manager retired. The new manager is a guy who's been here forever. He's a great guy. Really just a great crew all around. So, add to that the fact that on the other side of this building they have a hot tub, which as you get older and you're going through these long 12-hour days of boat work, definitely helps you to relax at the end of the day. One thing I will say is that I do not sleep well when Charis is on land. In fact, I don't sleep well on land at all for the first few nights, but anyway, that's a peculiarity of life aboard, I suppose. So the agenda for this haul out was pretty limited. Bottom paint, through hull service, essentially just a few things that can't be done in the water and need to be done at least every 2 years. But I always try and throw in a couple of vanity jobs just to keep the spirits up. This time it was refinishing the polyurethane cabin sole and touching up some of the white interior paint. Nothing major, all little small jobs, so there'll always be a combination of jobs that have to be done on the hard and jobs that could be done in the water but are just a little easier when you've got all your tools here and spread out. So that's what this week's about, and I'll take you through the process. A brief stopover panorama here on our way up to the biannual dry docking of Charis. I like to break the trip halfway, get the tides right, maybe get fair winds. A gentle swish in the background is the wind turbine telling me that the southwesterly is filling in and fair tide is running for the next few hours, so I'll be headed up the way. Next stop will be Fogland Point, but this is Third Beach in Middletown, Rhode Island, just at the mouth of the Seacocks River. So there's good anchorage here. I'm in about 14 feet low water, so somewhere around 18 feet high water. Good firm sand / mud. So this is a good stopover for anyone just heading along the coast or heading up the Seacocks River, trying to time the wind and tides. It's one of my favorite places to just stop for the night. Now you could probably tell a little bit from the frame that it gets a bit rolly here. You can get some swell wrap when there's a big southerly or southwesterly swell running, sort of coming around the point here. So the second leg of the short, it's about 30-mile journey from Padenarum to Portsmouth, Rhode Island for Charis's haul out. Going up the Seacocks River today. It occurs to me that Narragansett Bay is absolutely lovely. The backdrops, beautiful homes. Really a beautiful place. The downside is Narragansett Bay doesn't have the reliable summer southwesterlies that we are blessed with in Buzzards Bay and Vineyard Sound. So very often you get these light conditions. Definitely powerboat land. Just up ahead there, Fogland Point. That'll be our stop for tonight. We'll hang out there this afternoon and catch the morning tide for the last 5 miles of the trip up to the top of the Seacocks River. So the southerly has finally kicked up a little bit, and just in time as we arrive at today's destination, Fogland Point. Fortunately not living up to its name today. Beautiful day. It's a nice little stop halfway up the Seacocks River. Bunch of moorings just around the point here. Seem to be used primarily as weekend holiday moorings. But there's also good 11-foot mean low water mud anchoring outside the mooring field. Anyway, we're going to lay over here tonight before continuing tomorrow on up to the top of the Seacocks River. So always a nerve-wracking moment here as you see your home bodily lifted out of the water on a couple of straps, but Charis coming out on the travel lift looking pretty good. This bottom paint that I used 2 years ago is Seahawk Copper Coat with the anti-slime BioCop additive mixed in. 2 coats of that. Held up pretty well. A little soft growth, but it washed right off. So Charis has a 2-part bronze rudder stock. This lower section is pretty much a straight bronze round bar. The rudder itself is mahogany, a series of mahogany planks that are held together by drifts that actually go through and thread into the rudder stock. The upper stock comes down through a stuffing gland in the hull, and then it's got this bend in the aperture behind the prop, and it pretty much ends here at the bottom of the aperture. So what you see here is a custom modification that I made after my first trip to the Caribbean. These are bronze straps that wrap around the upper rudder stock and are through bolted. So there are 3 of them, and the reason for this was that I found on my first 2 passages offshore that the wind vane was so powerful in heavy weather that it was actually loosening the drifts, and there was some play between the rudder stock and the mahogany. Now, a little bit of play in the lower rudder stock is less of a problem. In the upper rudder stock, because all of the torque is transmitted down through this bend, it really wasn't tolerable to have any play in there. So the solution here, hat tip to Captain Bob Chase, who's no longer with us, one of the last master any tonnage, any ocean sail that I knew. Captain Chase was he was a treasure. Anyway, he was the one who suggested this idea. Apparently this was a fairly common thing back in the days of wooden rudders. So Charis's rudder is much more bulletproof because of the suggestion. So this mid strap on the rudder is an interesting arrangement. It's basically a bronze strap that's wrapped around the rudder stalk and bolted through the keel. Now, for many years it was just the bronze strap and the bronze rudder stalk, and the movement of the rudder would basically wear on that bronze strap to the point where I was replacing it, probably every 5 years. Then I stumbled on an idea, and that idea has worked really well ever since. What you're looking at inside the bronze strap is basically plastic, container plastic. If you want a fancy name for it, it's UHMW, ultra high molecular weight. If you want a not fancy name for it, it's that semi-flexible plastic that you buy just about everything in when you buy stuff. So what I do is I cut that into strips, and I haven't changed it this year, so I'm not able to show you, but by cutting that into a strip the width of the strap, I can then slide it in and around, and what you see there are just 2 zip ties to keep the plastic from shifting. Since I've done that, I have not had to replace the bronze strap once. The wear is absorbed by the plastic, and this year there's 2 layers of plastic in there, and we're still good. There's almost no play whatsoever, so I have not replaced those straps this year. I'm going to let them go another 2 years. So one other feature of the Allberg designs, particularly this one, you can notice here, the rudder is raised above the shoe. There's a space there, and then the rudder is rounded upward as you go aft. The idea here, and I can tell you it works, it's saved my rudder more than once, is that in a hard grounding where you manage to ride over the object that your keel has met, there's a chance, because of that gap and because of the slope, the trailing edge of the rudder, that you'll come off without slamming the rudder down. So covered in blue tape here are my ground plates. The small one was on Charis when I got her, and was just a small electronics ground. These are sintered bronze. The larger ones, trade name of those is Dynaplate. I don't know if they're still made, but there's one on each side. I put those in specifically to bond the single sideband ground plane, which is internal to the hull, and for the internal part of this ground plane I used 4-inch wide copper strap, and that actually runs all through the bilge, bonds the engine, the Monell water and fuel tanks. So we've got a terrific counterpoise for the single sideband, and always managed to put out a really good signal offshore. So up forward here, port and starboard side, these are, I think they're 1/4-inch thick copper plates, through bolted with silicon bronze bolts, and then bonded. This is a separate ground plane specifically to ground the mast and the rigging. All of the chain plates are tied in with heavy wire. The mast has a heavy wire, sort of battery cable sized wire, that runs down and to the plate. The port side plate is actually double the size of the starboard side plate. The theory on these is that charge is dissipated more through the edge than through the surface area, though I don't really know that that's true. I do know that I'd much rather have any potential lightning strike carried into the water through basically 4 large silicon bronze through bolts. When the boat was built, the only lightning ground plane was the through hulls, and that's something that I'm not comfortable with, just because a large enough charge could certainly damage the through hulls, if not blow them right out of them. So through hulls, Charis is down to 3 closable through hulls. That's the engine seawater intake. Up forward, over to the old head. That was the head seawater intake. That is now just a saltwater washdown system intake. And around with the hose sticking out of it to keep water from dribbling down the wet bottom paint. That's the galley sink overboard discharge. The sink in the head drains into the shower sump, and that discharges high up on the freeboard there with a pump. Back aft, so those are the 3 that have closures that have seacocks on the inside. This is a cockpit scupper. This is a deck scupper. There's one of those on each side. Those are fiberglass. There's actually a molded fiberglass tube that was molded into the hull when it was built and extends, in the case of the deck scupper, it extends all the way to the deck. The cockpit scuppers extend up to just below the cockpit with a short piece of hose to make the final connection above the waterline. So not a lot of holes in the bottom to worry about. And one of the things I do during the haul out, and I've not bored you with the details of that because frankly it's too mundane, but for each of these biannual haul outs I take the tapered plug out of the seacock, inspect it, grease it, and reassemble it. So for the 3 of them, it's probably 45 minutes worth of work. It's a little fiddly to get the engine one. It's kind of in a tight corner, so you've got to be careful not to drop anything in the bilge. But if you do that every 2 years, those things won't fail you. They will always work. So my hull discharges are high. That's deliberate. Forward there is the shower sump and head sink. Back aft here you've got the large one is the hand bilge pump. The smaller one is the 2,000 gallon electric bilge pump. The reason those are up high is that when you put discharges at the waterline, if one of your pumps is on and you're heeled over such that that discharge is submerged, when that pump turns off, you very likely will create a back siphon. So for inspected vessels, commercial vessels, the type that I work on, it's mandated that those be as high as practical. They're also required to have a closure valve on the inside, which in some cases can be handled with a check valve. Essentially, if you think about it, anything that's meant to drain water over the side should have a check valve on it that doesn't let water come back in, because there's no circumstance under which you would want that hose to let water go back to the source. And to that end, my galley sink here, at the top of the hose just below the sink, there's a ball check valve. So not saying that that'll save you, but it's one more simple step. So this is the spinner for the knot log. This was one of the projects for this haul out. This basically had plastic bushings through the rotational axis. This is pulled into the boat. I'm too much of a chicken to do it in the water, and it's way down deep in the bilge here, so basically if you do pull that out in the water, you're fumbling around with one hand trying to put the plug in. Anyway, so what I ended up doing to extend the life of this knot log was drilling out the center to clean it up a little bit. Then I filled the entire hole that the old bushings occupied with West System and high density filler, let it harden, and then drilled out the West System high density. So that is now my new bushing. Don't know how long it'll last. Hopefully the West System and the filler don't expand underwater. We'll see. I don't think it'll be a problem, but it seems to me right now to be working. So we'll find out. So one of the arrows in my quiver of these lightning haul-outs is this very homemade box trailer, and this is basically a pre-purchased flatbed trailer with a wooden framed aluminum skin box built on top of it, and serves as a shed whenever I do one of these haul outs within driving distance of my home barn. What I'll do is load this up with ladders and tools and anything I think I might need. Put it in here and trailer it down to where the boat's hauled. And this has been a really effective, really helpful way of having everything on hand that I might need during one of these haul outs. So interesting side yarn about the box trailer. This black coated aluminum sheathing that you see was purchased intended for interior decoration on a very popular dinner cruise boat called the Spirit of Boston. I worked in the shipyard in the early 90s that built her, and a whole pallet of this stuff came into the shipyard and had been damaged somewhere in the shipping process. Like a fork truck had basically smashed one corner of these flat sheets of aluminum and bent them. So either the shipper or the manufacturer basically said, well, we'll send you another pallet, just dispose of the old aluminum. And one of the nice things about working in the shipyard is when orders to dispose of still useful things came in, you got to volunteer. So here we are some 37 years later, and I'm still slowly disposing of the sheet aluminum that covers the outside of my box trailer. So here's an obscure but important haul out subtask that I always do: marked or anchor chain. I've chosen 25-foot interval spacings on my two chain roads, and those are very patriotically colored red, white, and blue, easy to remember, and then black at the fourth mark on the 125-foot road. So what you see here are my secondary road, which is 85 feet of 3/8. That one's just got red, white, and blue. And then my primary road, which is 125 feet of 5/16 on the 45-pound Rockna. That one's red, white, blue, and black. In addition to the paint, which does wear off before the 2-year haul-out period, there are zip ties, white zip ties on the white, black on the black, blue on the blue, etc. So that if the paint wears off, you can still see the zip ties. I know there are a lot of commercial products for this. Frankly, I found the zip ties work just fine, and all it's required is that if you see you've lost a zip tie, add a new one before you lose all of them. Anyway, someone once saw me doing this and thought I was going to paint the entire chain road, and sort of scoffed and laughed at me, and I said, well, no, I'm just marking length so I know how much chain is out, because if you don't know how much road you have deployed, then you don't know what your scope is. If you don't know what your scope is, frankly, you don't know how to anchor. So, small subtask. It also helps during a haul out to get that weight out of the bow locker, which is way overhanging here. So I'm not going to lie, life on a boat on the hard is anything but pleasant. In fact, it's one of the things that you have to kind of do on the sneak these days. I think probably because there's so much pressure on waterfront real estate value, people are very dialed in to folks who might be trying to find an alternate way to live on the waterfront without it costing them a lot. Anyway, trust me when I tell you that it's not my favorite thing to do. It's not a choice to live on the boat when it's on the hard. It just happens to be my home, and I've learned over the years that if I immerse myself rather than camping out somewhere else and commuting back and forth, but rather by being here at 5 in the morning to start work at 6 and work straight through until I can't do any more, I get it done a lot quicker. So probably the biggest improvement to making that less painful has been the airhead, which of course requires no seawater or no connections and functions just as well on land as it does when the boat's afloat. That's probably been the biggest improvement over the course of almost 40 years doing this. But I also find now you have to just let it remain an unasked question. Almost every boatyard that you go to does not want you to live on the boat when it's on land, and most will outright forbid it, but fortunately some just leave it as an unasked question, and you get away with it by being inconspicuous and polite and essentially making it less than obvious that you're spending the night on the boat after everybody else leaves. So, a small sidebar on this general philosophy haul out situation. As we've discussed in other videos, DIY is becoming a rarity. People no longer approach you and talk turkey about what you're doing on your boat. They just come over and express amazement that you're working on your own boat. But I think one of the things that's incumbent on us, if we do find a place that's willing to invest that trust to allow us to do our own work in their yard, first and most obvious is to work safely so that they're not worried that you're going to become a legal claim. But not far behind that is to work cleanly. You really are not going to be welcome back in a place if you make a mess or leave a mess. So my policy is, even if I find chunks of paint that obviously isn't mine because it's blue, or debris under the boat, it gets picked up, it gets cleaned up. Throughout the entire haul out, I'll have a contractor bag, as you see here, and every bit of trash that I see on the ground, mine or not, gets put into that bag. When I leave this spot, it will be cleaner than when they put me down here. And that, along with a little well-distributed libation at the end of the haul out, is no guarantee of a welcome back, but it does sort of grease the skids a little that 2 years hence they may say, sure, we'll haul you out and let you paint your own bottom again. Well, folks, that's it. The end of a pretty long week. I don't remember it hurting so much last time, but I think every time I do this 2 years later and I'm a little older, the pain is a little bit more noticeable. But for all that, I'm grateful to still have been able to get everything done, and just takes a little bit more ibuprofen to get to the end of the week now. So the bottom's done, the through hulls are serviced, did a little engine service while I was at it, did a few vanity jobs, got the boat basically looking pretty good. Top sides, well, I did them 2 years ago, and frankly I wasn't really excited about the way the job came out, but this is not the dry dock that I'm going to redo the top sides. That'll be at least 2 years forward from now. But overall, I'd say everything went fairly smoothly, and hopefully the launch tomorrow morning will do the same, and get back in the water, get the head sail back up, and make our way back around from Portsmouth, Rhode Island for the 30-mile run back to Padenham. Anyway, that's what I've got for this week. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next week.